this presentation aims to give an introduction to the regulatory legal framework applicable to orphan medicinal products. And just to set up a bit the scene, this presentation deals with orphan products, and those relate to rare conditions, which are the conditions suffered by some patients that are so rare that only a very small number of patients in Europe suffer from those conditions. The challenges faced by the regulator in relation to that situation is that it's very difficult for pharmaceutical companies to be willing to invest money into those very rare conditions, simply because it's so expensive to bring a medicinal product to the market in the EU, that a product who treats a condition or prevents a condition which is only limited to a very small number of people will not be worth it, really, in commercial terms. So those products that we call orphan products benefit now from a very specific legal framework set out by Regulation 141/2000, which provide not only for criteria to designate which product would qualify as orphan, but very importantly, which gives a major incentive to pharmaceutical company by providing for a marketing exclusivity period of protection, which we see is very beneficial and has led to incentivize company to develop medicinal product to treat those very rare conditions. So with this in mind, let me just first of all set up the legal framework applicable to those orphan medicinal products. So as we discussed, there is Regulation 141/2000, which really set up the basis for orphan product. It set up a special committee who deals with orphan products. It determines criteria for designation, the procedure to follow, and it provides for these very important incentives. Then there is Commission Regulation 447/2000, extremely important piece of legislation because it really implements the basic orphan regulation and really goes into some specific points such as the criteria for designation, giving more explanation, as well as defining what it's meant in the regulation by similar medicinal product or clinical superiority. We're going to see in a minute how important those criteria are. And then, of course, Regulation 726/2004, which is the regulation setting up the European Medicine Agency, but which also deals with centralized marketing authorization applications, which are mandatory for orphan medicinal products. And we should not be forgetting a very large body of guidelines issued by the authorities. Those guidelines are not binding, legally non-binding, but they're very persuasive, and even the European Court of Justice relying on those in relation to the interpretation of the legislation. Now, the first really step to go through is to determine whether or not a medicinal product would qualify as an orphan medicinal product and therefore benefit from those very important incentives. The first criteria is the prevalence criterion, and what it means is that we looked at as to whether or not the particular condition would be treated by the orphan product is a prevalence of less than 5 over 10,000 patients. This seems to be quite clear. This was an interesting case looked at in 2010 with applications submitted for product treating variola and monkeypox infections, which the prevalence was considered to be in Europe 0, therefore no patient with those conditions. And strangely, although the product got a positive opinion by the EMEA, the Commission refused to authorize the product on the basis that prevalence 0 would not fulfill this criteria. Now, that in the light of potential risk faced by the European patient population, for example, Ebola crisis we went through a couple of years ago now, led to the Commission indicating in a notice that they would be revisiting this situation. So interesting to see what's going to come out from it. Now, if we fail to demonstrate prevalence criterion, there is the economic criterion. In other words, do the investment cost would exceed the expected returns in normal circumstances? And if the answer is no, then you're not an orphan drug product. You should go through the normal process and just being a standard medicinal product. But if the answer is yes, then there would be a second step who would have to be fulfilled, which is also a second step who would have to be fulfilled if we pass the prevalence criterion, and in other words is to determine whether or not the product is intended to treat a life-threatening condition or chronically debilitating conditions, or is intended for diagnostic or prevention of such a condition. So if you fulfill this criteria, then you move on to the next step to overcome, which is the satisfactory method criterion, which really the issue we're looking at, is there any other satisfactory method of diagnosis, prevention or treatment authorized for that particular condition? And if the answer is no, then you are an orphan drug and you qualify for the orphan legislation to be applicable. If the answer is yes, we can still being off the hook and having it being considered as an orphan drug if the medicinal products you bring into the market is nevertheless of significant benefit for those who are affected by this particular condition. So it's the significant benefit criterion, which has given rise to a bit of jurisprudence, really, in particularly the Now Pharma case, as well as the Behring case are of relevance for this. And you can see that the criteria apply actually very strictly. And in the recent Commission communication that I referred to already, the clinical assumptions that are made to support significant benefit in comparison with the existing treatment available has to be really justified. So very interesting to look into this, and generally is the last criterion who is raising some interesting developments and arguments. Now, very importantly, the company bringing an orphan product to the market may qualify for orphan designation potentially at very early stage, but this is really looked at again when an applicant for an orphan medicinal product submit an application for the marketing authorization. Then the authority looks to all those criteria again, and it's at that stage, it's very importantly to be the first to get through the race, because he's the one who will get it all, basically. So by having an orphan designation, it doesn't give you the exclusivity if you don't pass this hurdle at the time of the application for the marketing authorization. And what the winner would win, it would benefit from, is the protection, the marketing exclusivity protection we're going to be looking at in a minute. So for a second company to be able to get through the hurdle and being authorized for treating an orphan condition, the product must not be similar to other existing products. It must be that the company had applied for different therapeutic indications within the same condition, or that the second applicant show that one of the derogations actually applies. Therefore, if you are a company active in trying to bring an orphan product on the market, you really need to be monitoring what your competitors may be doing. Very importantly, I've been speaking about orphan market exclusivity, and we're going to see what orphan exclusivity is about. but it's important to keep in mind that an orphan product benefits potentially from regulatory data protection if applicable, and I refer you to a separate presentation on the subject, and the marketing exclusivity that we're going to develop now. The regulatory data protection, however, only protects the data generated in support of an application and prevents a third company from relying on those data. It does not prevent a company from developing its own data and getting access to the market. However, the orphan market exclusivity does prevent the authorities from either accepting an application for a marketing authorization or approving a similar product for the same therapeutical indication. And that is independently of the fact that the second applicant may have very well developed its own data to support its product. It will not be able to enter the market unless one of the derogation applies. So what the legislation is telling us is that when you have an orphan medicinal product authorized, the Commission or the Member State will not be able to accept another application for marketing authorization, grant a marketing authorization, or accept to extend an already existing marketing authorization for the same therapeutical indication for a very similar product. And all this would not be possible for a period of 10 years from the grant of the valid MA in the European Union or the EEA. So it's a 10 years of market exclusivity afforded to an orphan product. This period of 10 years may be reduced to 6 years in instances where after 5 years of having the orphan product on the market, the authority are revisited whether the criterion is still applicable, and potentially if the criteria are not applicable anymore, then the 10 years period of marketing exclusivity is reduced to 6 years. Now, it's also important to note, although not to be developed in this presentation, that there could be an extension to the market exclusivity for an additional 2 years in instances where the marketing authorization holders has developed and conducted clinical trial in the pediatric population and has done so in accordance with an agreed PIP. And this is in accordance with the pediatric regulation, which would be the object of a different separate presentation. But if the data has been generated in accordance with the PIP, which is the investigation plan who has been agreed with the authorities, then the company would be able to benefit for 2 years of marketing exclusivity. And that's a reward for conducting pediatric studies in the pediatric population. So you can see from this that if you have an orphan product, you would have a 10 years of market exclusivity if you are authorized, but can be extended to 2 years, additional years, which means a maximum of 12 years of market exclusivity, with the potential to be reduced to 6 in instances where the criteria for obtaining the market, for obtaining the orphan designation are not met anymore. And again, the authority only revisit that at the end of year 5. This legislation has been in place for more than 10 years now, and no product has seen his market exclusivity reduced. What is a similar medicinal product? Very importantly, because that guarantees the protection, and the implementing Commission regulation states that it's a medicinal product containing a similar active substance as contained in a currently authorized orphan product and which is intended for the same therapeutical indication. Now, a similar active substance is an identical active substance or an active substance with the same principal molecular structural feature and which act via the same mechanism. So very importantly, and therefore For example, in case of isomer, complex, ester, salt and non-covalent derivative of the original active substance, or an active substance that differ from the original active substance only with respect to minor changes in the molecular structure, such as the structure analog. So that we're really referring here and trying to cover every situation, whether it is a traditional chemical molecule or whether it is a biotech substance. Now, as I said, there is derogation to the 10 years of market exclusivity, and those derogations are in instances where the holder of the initial marketing authorization is consenting to a third party obtaining a marketing authorization, or the holder of the first marketing authorization is unable to supply the needs of the market. So a second marketing authorization holder is required, or the second applicant is coming with a new product which is clinically superior to the first product. And then it becomes interesting to determine, but what do we mean by clinically superior? And the implementing regulation provides that it is a medicinal product which provides a significant therapeutic or diagnostic advantage by comparison to the original product. And the way to look at that is either because the new product is more efficacious or safer, at least to a substantial portion of the target population, or in exceptional cases, there is a demonstration that the medicinal product otherwise make a major contribution to the diagnostic or the patient care. And if you fell within those categories, then you would be able to be authorized jointly with the first applicant. And in that instance, the two companies or the second applicant would have to share whatever is remaining from the protection afforded to the initial product. There is also interesting the situation where a third applicant wants to obtain a marketing authorization, and then what he will have to demonstrate is that obviously its product is safer, more effective, or otherwise clinically superior than those who have already been authorized. And then again, they would be sharing the period of protection available. There is an interesting case, the TIVA case, that I would not develop in this presentation, which is still pending in appeal, where the authorities have been looking into those situations where there is a second applicant trying to get through a market exclusivity. So I refer you to this case. Thank you very much for your attention.